There are various kinds of malachim, various kinds of angels. As I pointed out earlier, they have different names. And some of them are called malachei habala. Malachei habala are destructive angels. As the pasuk says, there is a pasuk in Tehillim. Let me see if I can find it over here. Ose malacham ruchot, misharetav esh lohet. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu has made malachim his powerful winds, and his servants burning fires. Now, that's very interesting that I'm talking about it tonight. Burning fires. Well, there's a lot of burning fires tonight still in San Diego County and maybe a little bit north of here. And if you want to explain it using language of the street, using language that people are more familiar with, then you could say, well, you know, Santa Ana winds, dry weather, very windy. This is what gives the fuel to produce all these major fires, and we have them from time to time. It is very important for a Jew to always have the right hashkafa, to have the right perspective about things in life. Hashkafa means perspective. And this could make a big difference in one's faith. How much faith one has in what happens around him. Is there human intervention? Is there divine intervention? Or is something just coincidental? So when we spoke about Hashgachat Hashem, I think I made it clear that there is nothing in Judaism that's called coincidental. B'mikre. Everything is B'ashgacha Elyonah. Everything is through divine providence. God is involved in this world. Sometimes He allows things to happen, but He's still aware of things, and things just don't happen by themselves. Even nature, that is basically something that is somewhat independent and does things on its own, is still following certain rules that are in place by God. And certain times, nature breaks the rules, and that is called a miracle. When something is not natural, when something is supernatural, we call it a miracle. And for most of us, I think, miracles exist. We know that they exist. And they are one of the indicators that God is involved in this world. He did not only create the world, He's still around and supervises the world. We don't always see it because He dresses up a lot of what He does in nature. So we say, oh, there's a San Andreas Fault running through part of California. And whenever the plates down there move, there's an earthquake. And geologists one of these days are going to be able to predict them. Shtuyot, nonsense. Hamabit la'aretz v'tir'ad, the pasuk says. When God looks down to the earth, it trembles, it shakes. Rabbi tells in the Gemara why there are earthquakes, why there are tornadoes, why there are severe thunderstorms. All of that is documented and written down. Obviously, one does not have emunah. If one's faith in God is very weak, then he may not accept it, he may not embrace this idea. But for us who grew up with it, it's a fact. There are no questions asked. But even many of us who know these things, sometimes we forget ourselves. And we say, oh no, poor people, you know, they should not have gone to live in Malibu. You know, that's not correct to say that, because what makes this place safer than Malibu? I mean, B'ezrat Hashem, everything should be safe here. I don't want to wish anything, any harm. But the fact is it has nothing to do with the geography necessarily. It has to do with because a decision has been made, and a malach has come down in the form of a fire. And whenever you have destructive fires that cause tremendous amount of damage, loss of life, it's not just H2O, or in other words, water, if it's a flood, and it's not just whatever element you want to call it. It's not just the element that is being so destructive. It is an actual malach habala, or malach mehabel, a destructive angel that's carrying out the tornado, the earthquake, and the fires. So some of the malachim, that's what their job is. This week we're going to be reading Parshat Vayera. And in Parshat Vayera, we also deal with one of the first incidents where you can actually see documentation of angels being involved in turning over a city. Sodom and Amorah are turned over. Who's in charge of the job? Gabriel. Right? The three angels come to visit Abraham. Michael, Raphael, Gabriel. Michael leaves. Raphael and Gabriel go out to Sodom. Who's in charge of the Ma'apecha, the destruction of Sodom? Gabriel. Gevurah, strength. That's his job. He's involved in that. He's sent for that. That's his mission. Just an example. An example, and by the way, I didn't time the lecture for this parasha. It's interesting that it just came out, but it's not a coincidence, right? So, we see a real example in the Torah of malach involved in what? In Pura'anut. Pura'anut is the general word used to describe not destruction, but calamity. You know what a calamity is? That's even more than just destruction. Major calamity. That's Pura'anut. Rabbis tell us that the Pura'anut does not come for nothing. If there's a Pura'anut, whether it's famine, or whether it's a tsunami, earthquake, anything, it's for a reason. There's something that has been happening in that community, in that area, or in the general location, that unfortunately, that's what they deserve. Now, God can bring earthquakes in any part of the globe. But for some reason, He chose to use whatever the nature allows for in that particular location. That's perfectly acceptable to believe in that. Even though it's possible to have an earthquake in Cleveland, Ohio. They usually don't have earthquakes, I believe. Right? It's possible, but He may choose something else that is more proper for that location for whatever reasons that He knows. Rabbis tell us, Hakol Mesayein Lamelech, all of Hashem's creations help the king. Afilu rochot, afilu mazikim. Rochot and mazikim. What are rochot and mazikim? Rochot are spirits, ghosts, which we'll be talking about separately. What they are. When we talk about people who are possessed by a spirit, we'll talk about what are ghosts. What is a haunted house? What does Judaism, of course, have to say about these things? These are important. I mean, they sound maybe a little bit mystic. They sound a little bit scary. But it's important to have an understanding of these things, because the more we know, the calmer we will be. You'll be able to go to the haunted house and not be scared. But anyway, Rochot are spirits of people who have died. Mazikim is a general name given to all the malachim and shedim who can be destructive. What makes a malach different than a human being? Well, a malach is spiritual. Since he's spiritual, he's not limited. A human being, because he's physical, he has certain limitations. Malach can fly all over the place. Malach knows atidot, he knows the future too. Because a malach, an angel, is closer to the source. Where he is in his plane, in his dimension, he's closer to where the information is coming from. Therefore, he knows more, he knows the future. And certain malachim, all they do is stay up there. They have a certain function that is very, very far removed from this earth. Other malachim are more involved in this world, in what happens in this life, in other words, in our life in this world. There are some malachim that are called sarim, ministers of nations. They are the ones who are in charge for the welfare of a particular nation. There is a minister of Iran, not the foreign minister. We're talking about upstairs. There's a minister of the United States of America, minister of France. Every nation has a minister. And in the same way, the mazalot, the constellations or the stars, however you want to call them, the ones that control man's fate and destiny, have been given certain powers, and they give out a certain energy, and they do whatever they do, these mazalot. The same thing with malachim. They have been given certain powers, certain jurisdictions, and they perform whatever it is that needs to be performed, usually in the spiritual world, unless it's a malach that is somewhat involved in what happens here in this world. There are some malachim, however, that are good malachim too. They are the malachim, the angels that protect us. They are the malachim that accompany us. According to our tradition, Shabbat, there are two malachim that accompany us home from the shul, from the synagogue. Various kinds of malachim that are more involved with human beings that interact in this world. Does everybody here know who the most famous malach of all is that interacts with human beings? Eliyahu Navi. Eliyahu, who was once the prophet, who eventually became a malach, he's the most famous one. He's actually been seen. How could he be seen if he's spiritual? The answer to that is, all of these malachim and shadim that are spiritual in their composition, in their nature, when they actually come down into this world, they have the ability to materialize, lidgalem. And when they materialize, the Kabbalah explains they're actually putting on a suit of sorts of this world that resembles this world. It's not completely physical, but in order for us to be able to see them, they have to put it on. And that is how we are able sometimes to see somebody that had passed away, and all of a sudden he appears. They call that an apparition. And apparitions can be very, very, how should I say, not too clear, transparent, cloudy, and some apparitions could be in real life form. My grandfather, Alav Shalom, says that he once was on a bus in Israel, and who sits down all of a sudden next to him? His mother, who had passed away 10 years ago, 10 years before that incident. I mean, he could swear that I was his mother. It was exact, some people look alike, but basically she was wearing the same head cover. How do you call them? No, you know what the women used to cover their hair. What is that called in English? Mikpachat. A scarf? Yeah, because a scarf is usually when it's cold, you put on a scarf. A shawl? A tichel in Yiddish, right. What is that? A head cover? She was wearing the head cover the exact same color. Yeah, kerchief, yeah. She was wearing the exact same one, same dress, everything. So what does an excited son do? Mommy, how are you doing? What are you doing here? She didn't say a word. No, he's doing all the talking, and she's not answering. Okay, couple stops down the road, bus stops, she gets off, so he goes after her. As soon as he goes after her, she disappears. What is this supposed to mean? I don't really have an answer to that, not yet. But the fact that these things happen, we know. Why they happen, who knows? But they happen. Those who have left this world, who are spiritual now, who are ruchot, spirits, can come back. But when they do, and for some reason we need to see them, then they have to dress up. They have to be seen. Otherwise, we're not going to see them. Okay. There is a way that you can see a malach that is easier. And that is in a dream. As we said earlier, when you're dreaming, your physical body is at rest. You have less limitations. The neshama is able to express itself. The neshama is able to travel. And even though you live in Los Angeles, all of a sudden you're in Hong Kong. In a dream, everything is possible. Almost everything is possible. So in a dream, if one is lucky, he can see a malach communicating to him. But that malach, how does he appear? He usually takes on the image of a human being. Otherwise, we would be too scared. One of the reasons why one does not always see his parents or grandparents that have left this world in a dream, one of the reasons is because they would be too scared to see them. So sometimes if that relative has a message, he goes to an uncle, to a cousin, tell my daughter this and this and that. They don't go directly to the person because that person would be too afraid. The shock would be too much. That is one reason why they don't go. Yes?
When my mother was in America, I was in Israel.
Right.
And then out of the house, I saw my image. I got scared. And then
That's right.
not alive.
Right. She for some reason wanted you to see her. They also have to have permission for that. So they don't always have the permission. They don't always come and communicate freely in a dream. By the way, I'm very happy upstairs. It's not so hot, but depending where they are, of course, it can be very hot. So they don't freely communicate. They don't have the permission because that would interfere with our free will. But sometimes they do come. So in a dream, one can have a message from one who has departed, or one can actually see a malach, depending on his level, depending on his merits. A halom alidei malach, the rabbis tell us, is a halom amiti. If you see a dream involving a malach, it's a true dream. Because a malach does not lie. As opposed to what? As opposed to another kind of malach, of halom that I'll talk about soon. But anything that comes through a malach in a dream is usually for real. We don't always know it's a malach, that's the problem, but at least it's real. This level of Gilui al-Yedei Malach is not as much of a revelation as if one were to have Ruach HaKodesh. Ruach HaKodesh is a higher level than having a Gilui, a revelation in a dream through a Malach. Nevertheless, it's special. Okay, so we've covered a little bit about Malachim, what they do. There are different kinds of them. Some are destructive. Nevertheless, they're still doing his job, God's job. They still have an important mission. And some of them are actually beneficial. Some of them are helpful. Some of them speak up for us. They defend us in heaven later on when one dies. There will be his defense counsel and so forth. Different kinds of malachim. Now we're going to go and talk a little bit about demons. What's a demon? Well, there are quite a few of them if you want to see them on Melrose. Yeah. That's one kind of demon. What is a demon? Demons are half angels, half human. That's a small definition of a demon. Half angel, half human. What does it mean, half angel, half human? They have certain functions like angels and certain functions as human beings. In what do they resemble angels? In three ways. They have wings, for the most part. They can fly. And they know future events. In what ways do they resemble human beings? Also in three ways. They eat and drink, they reproduce, and they die. Okay? So basically, they're in some ways like angels, and in some ways like human beings. What do we need them for? Well, in order to understand what we need them for, you have to know when they were created. There's something very unique about their creation. And if you read most commentaries, you will never be able to figure out why is it that demons were created ben hashemashot yom shishi. Rabbis tell us that demons were created at the very, very end of creation. On Friday, twilight, right before it became Shabbat. Right? You know what twilight is? Ben hashemashot. Sun is down, but it's not yet dark. Twilight, ben hashemashot. It's not Shabbat yet 100%, but it's already after the Shekiah, after sunset. Everything in creation is done, except Hashem says, you know what? I need some demons too. And he made them at the very end, right before Shabbat. Now, because it was right before Shabbat, Shabbat just came in. So because of that, they're not complete. They have no body, physical body. Because, this is the way it's described, because they were created at the last moment and Shabbat set in, they were created without a body. They're incomplete. They're not perfect. They're pegumim, as the rabbis call it. They're imperfect. Hashem does not know that he only has 10 minutes left, that he has to just push them, and all of a sudden the curtain comes down and they're left without a physical body. If you were to read regular sources, That's the impression you get. That's funny. Why are they created at the end? Why are they created without a body? Just because Shabbat set in and there was no time to give them a body. Therefore, they're imperfect. Therefore, they're half angels and half human beings. Or as we say in Yiddish, they're nishtahin, nishtaher. They're not here or there. What is it? There's a need for them too. There's a pasuk. V'ochachti b'shevet anashim b'nig'ei b'nei adam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will inflict pain and bring about all sorts of diseases and plagues to human beings through these imperfect beings. Imperfect beings will inflict pain and suffering on imperfect actions. Human beings who do things in an imperfect way are exposing themselves to be punished by these imperfect beings called Shadim. Various kinds of Shadim. There are even some that are Jewish Shadim. In other words, they study Torah. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in depth next week. But for now, all you need to know is that for the most part, Shadim are mazikim. They punish. They are pretty much the branch that is in charge of not just executive, but judicial in every sense of the word. They go out and they punish. What kind of punishments? When you drop something and it breaks, when you lose something, that's all through a shed. That's our tradition, that losing something, having something break on you, or even getting hurt, it very possibly involves a shed. That's part of what their job is. You forget, yeah. That's another example. Yes? No, that's kishuf. You're talking about witchcraft. Now, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll be talking in a couple more weeks about the impure forces, so that will allow us to better understand all of these kohot, all of these forces out there, all of these powers that exist in this world. But right now we're dealing with the more spiritual. Witches and witchcraft involves more the physical world. So Shadim, for the most part, are mazikim. They can hurt people, they punish people, they inflict pain, and Hashem uses them too. And there are various kinds of them. Not only are they half human and half angels, but because they're imperfect, most of them have no hair.
But you can't see them because they don't have a body.
One second. Most of them have no hair. Now, why did I share with you that? Next week, you'll find out. Okay? Why I just told you that they have no hair. If you want to know why is that important, come next week and I'll tell you why. Okay? Now, anybody want to see them? It's not easy. Why? They're not around us too much. And if you're walking by yourself where they are, they may hurt you. They may appear to you. To one individual, they appear and they can be seen and they can hurt. To two individuals, they can appear but they won't hurt them. To three individuals, if you're already part of a group, they usually don't appear. They're usually in rural places, not in cities, unless they were there before the people came and built their home. And some homes have them as we're speaking. And I'll tell you how you can know if there's a demon in your home next week. In other words, because it's a different topic. It's a whole different topic. But I can tell you today what to do not to have one, or how to drive them out. That I'll tell you.
What about when Malachim arrive?
Yeah.
Merkava, would that be in your house too? What was the question? I'm sorry.
The Merkava? What's that?
No. When Malachim comes down here,
Right.
they also come through your house? You know, those kind of demons stay in your house and go.
The angels are all the time. As I mentioned before, there are some angels that accompany you from the Bet HaKnesset, from the synagogue into your home.
Ones that come for a special.
Eliyahu Navi, sometimes. There are angels that come to our homes, but they're the more positive, not the negative, not the ones that cause damage, right? Now we're talking about the Shadim, half human, half angels. Now, we still have to answer the question, why did Hashem make them at the very end? All of a sudden, there's no time to make them a body and they're stuck.
You don't see them, I guess.
Huh?
You can see them.
Sometimes, yes, yeah. So anyway, why are they half humans and half angels? Because they were created at the end. Therefore, they're stuck without a body. Therefore, they're half-half. But why? They're pegumim. They are imperfect. They are used to inflict pain on acts of imperfection, on avonot, on sins. Hashem uses them. The way the Kabbalah explains it is that Hashem intentionally creates them at the end and has the Shabbat come in all of a sudden. Why? First of all, anything that needed to be created that was of immediate need and importance for the world was already created. These are extras. All the extras that are not as important but are still necessary, creates them at the very end. But why have Shabbat come in and stop your work in the middle? This is all intentional. Of course, Hashem runs the world. He runs the show. He knows what He's doing. So the Kabbalah explains that had Hashem allowed them to form completely, these would have been negative forces with a body, that would have been too destructive for this world. Since there is some negativity being created in them, even though they don't have free will, Hashem did not want them to have a body. This physical world would not be able to handle negative forces with a body too, so powerful as they are. So basically, Shabbat coming down means Hashem says, that's as much as I'm willing to give them. I don't want to give these forces a body, a physical body too. So they're going to be in between. Now, these forces are imperfect because they have no body. They resemble human beings, but they have no body, so they're imperfect. And because they are imperfect, come back next week and you'll see what they do, what they actually do to try to become perfect. Okay? Interesting idea, right? They're imperfect, but they want to be perfect. Okay? So that's the topic next week. But these are called shadim. They are necessary. They are part of the judiciary and executive branch of carrying out Hashem's will. They do not have free will, pretty much. They act like angels in many ways, that they carry out everything almost automatically. But these demons, too, have the ability to materialize. And when they do, you pretty much will know it. But not always.
So demon is a shit.
Okay. Yeah. Not always. According to the Kabbalah, there is one kind of mazik that is always accompanying an individual. And that is a mazik that is created as a result of a sin, as a result of an avon. Certain avonot produce a certain mazik, just like certain mitzvot produce malachim, angels. And big tzaddikim would be able to see a man who would enter their door, there's a mazik coming in with them, almost basically holding on to him, embracing them, attached to them, as a result of having committed a terrible sin. And the only way to get rid of him, to stop accompanying you, is by destroying that being, through real teshuvah. Otherwise, he's there until a person dies in this world. If you want to know an example of an avon that produces that is one who lives intimately with a non-Jewish woman, with a goya. The Kabbalah says she attaches herself to him like a dog. And she does not leave him until he gets upstairs to court, the heavenly court. That image of that mashchit, of that demon that was created through the avon, is attached to him at all times. And of course, you may ask, so what if it's attached? Nobody can see it anyway, except for tzaddikim. Well, if she's attached, that brings about bad mazal to the person. That can destroy his parnasah, that can bring a curse to his home. Who knows? People wonder what's going on. It could be that somebody brought into the house a curse. And what is a curse? A curse is similar to an ain hara, to the evil eye. What is the evil eye? A few weeks from now, B'ezrat Hashem. That's the topic a few weeks from now. Another energy, negative energy that is out there that is capable of hurting people.
Evil eye?
Ain hara. Okay. Evil eye. Okay.
By looking.
Yeah, exactly. So there are all sorts of things out there that can hurt. But of course, everything is given the permission to do so for the most part through the judicial and executive branch. When it comes to a dream, however, you can see shadim in the dreams. And these dreams are usually false, but they can be scary. And they can be unclean. So you don't want to have those kind of dreams. So how do you avoid them? I'm going to give you 3 suggestions. 3 ideas that can very much help avoid having trouble with them, at least at night in the dream. Make sure you have kosher mezuzot on your bedroom and your home. Rabbi tells in the Kabbalah that if there is a good mezuzah on the door, a shed does not even approach the house. Does not even come close to the house.
What if you send your mezuzahs to get checked or something?
Get them up as soon as possible. You're involved in a mitzvah. You're checking them out. Yeah, but anyway, as long as you do it in a short time, it's okay. But you don't want to be without one too long. Maybe keep the one in your bedroom and have the other ones checked first. Don't check them all at the same time. You want to have good mezuzot. That's very powerful. It's a very important, powerful shemirah, protection. You also want to say Kriyat Shema Lamitah with the proper kavanah. The Kriyat Shema before you go to sleep, if you have the proper kavanah, if you're focused and say it, and you say the entire Kriyat Shema, including the portion that's of this, in describing what Shlomo HaMelech, Solomon, did to protect himself at the nights. There's a portion. That's, remember the portion that is mentioned in Shir HaShirim. מיטתו של שלמה, 60 גיבורים סביב לה מגיבורי ישראל, כולם אחוז החרב, מלומדי מלחמה איש חרבו על ירחו מפחד בלילות. If you have the entire nusach, it's there. And if you say the entire nusach of the Kriyat Shema, vidui, it's very, very powerful. According to the Kabbalah, if one says the Kriyat Shema really b'chavanah, he's able to destroy those demons or mazikin that he has created from certain sins. Men have more of a need for it than women do. Because especially the sin of shedding one's seed in vain creates all sorts of demons. There's different kinds, remember we said there's different kinds of them. There's some that are created through shedding one's seed in vain. And they are very, very bad for one to have around him. So one of the way of getting rid of them is by Kriyat Shema Lamitah with the proper kavanah. And the third thing that is very important for everybody to be careful with is not to have bad thoughts during the day. Unclean thoughts, because when one has unclean thoughts, they invade his dream with unclean thoughts. They have permission. So they bypass your doors because you invited them. You had an unclean thought, you're basically inviting them. They invade your dream. And that's when a man can see himself being involved with a woman in a dream where he would not have thought of doing that during the day. But he thought about it. Because he had these unclean thoughts, they invade his dream, and that can, of course, have very unhealthy consequences.
You say unhealthy.
Hirhurim.
If you think about something bad,
כן, כן.
come bad.
לא, למשל על נשים.
כן.
מהרהר בנשים. על נשים. ביום הזה זה מטמא אותו בלילה. There is a certain woman demon, I don't want to mention her name, that she's in charge of that. That's her department. Getting men into trouble. So, yeah. Yeah. What is that? Yeah. So anyway, just 3 examples, 3 ideas of how you can do to protect yourself. Anyway, just to summarize, the rabbis tell us, Arbeh shelichim lamakom. Hashem has many messengers to carry out His mission. He has frogs, snakes, He has demons, He has malachim. They all carry out His mission. Arbeh shlichim lamakom. Hashem has many messengers. And what do they all have in common? Those that pursue human beings, those who punish human beings. In Pirkei Avot it is written, "V'nifraim mimeno mida'ato, v'shelo mida'ato." When they are sent to punish, to carry out a mission, they may do so with one being aware or cognizant of it, or with one being unaware of it. I mean, sometimes, I'll give you an example. Let's say you lost a few $1,000. Most of us are aware if we lose that kind of money, because it's a lot of money. So hopefully, but if it's a smaller amount, you may not even notice it. So sometimes we notice things, sometimes we do not notice things. Obviously, it's important for one to be careful and observe what is going on in his life, so that if he sees a trend, if he sees problems, if he sees that all of a sudden his mazal is down, in parnasah, in everywhere, in health, then it could be that they're after him. They're signaling something to him. So rabbis tell us, if you see a wave of tzarot, a wave of problems, tifashpesh b'ma'asim, examine your deeds. Think about what you did. Perhaps you can correct it on time. Otherwise, these messengers have permission. They have permission to carry out their mission, and there are all kinds of missions, and there are all kinds of situations. I mean, the Holocaust was a terrible decree. But those involved in that were also destructive. And those destructive angels appeared as Gestapo, appeared in many forms and fashions. And the rabbis say that whoever escaped that Holocaust had to have had two angels out of his side at all times. Because when you have a big tragedy like that, that's a terrible decree. Very few people are spared. There has to be somebody protecting you, because the angels or the destructive angels are almost giving blanket approval. Just get, everybody's is fair play. Righteous, crooked, children, the elderly. And that's why you saw all kinds go, because it was a terrible decree. But those who are in charge of carrying it out, even though they were brutal human beings, Nazis, who are going to be, of course, accountable for their actions, nonetheless, in order for that to happen, in order for them to be able to carry out successfully, they've had to have given permission. If they don't have permission, the gun is going to jam. They won't see the person. They just won't think of entering that village. There are many ways that Hashem can protect one if it's not meant for him to get hurt. But if Chas v'Shalom there's a terrible decree, then these forces are operating in full force. All of this, what does it all prove, and why are we talking about this? Is because all of these are examples of Hashem's ashgacha in this world. That Hashem is in charge, sheyesh din v'yesh dayan, that even though we don't always see it and it's not always crystal clear to us, there are so many ways of carrying out Hashem's will, so many ways that it could happen. Like Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were being threatened to be thrown into the furnace if they don't bow to the idol. The king threatened them, I'm going to kill you. He says, listen, you think you're killing us? Even if you don't kill us, if it is meant for us to die, Hashem has many bears and lions that can do the job too. It doesn't have to happen through you. The only thing is that if you do it, you're going to be accountable for it, because you're a human being, you have free will. That's the big difference. That is why Paro was punished. That is why every human being, who even though he did what he was basically asked to do or allowed to do, nevertheless, he's accountable. All of this shows tremendous hashgacha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that's running the show. And B'ezrat Hashem, we'll continue with this a little bit more next week. Thank you.